You're listening to 17 Carat K-Pop, the show that's a little bit of everything with a K-pop twist. Visit 17caratkpop.weebly.com for more information about the show. That's 17caratkpop.weebly.com. Enjoy the show! Hello everybody and welcome back to 17 Carat K-Pop. Today on the show, I want to start out with three really big exciting announcements. First of all, the show has officially been added to Apple Podcasts, so spread the word about that. That is a really exciting piece of news for me. Second of all, the show's official website is up and running, and I will start sending out newsletters very soon, so make sure you sign up for the 17 Karat K-Pop newsletter and get the rest of the updates as well as bonus content, links to the full articles and studies and things that I talk about on my show. You can also read there my interview with author Lila Lee that I talked about in the show, my interview with Purpleback, and future interviews, hopefully, fingers crossed. So a lot of interviews and a lot of bonus content, as well as just follow-up content on what we start talking about on the show. So if you want all of that, make sure you check out 17caratkpop.weebly.com. The official website for the show is now up and running. And the third big announcement. I am going to, in addition to continuing to regularly upload 17 Karat K-Pop episodes as normal, there's a side series that I have started now. So I'm still debating. I'm pretty sure I'm just going to stick to this one channel to post it, but I may also give it its own. You may be able to subscribe to this and then that show separately, but I have another kind of side podcast, a mini-series, a short-term mini-series in the works. So what I have decided is I'm going to treat as a separate project because it talks a lot more about fandom culture overall in a way detached from K-pop. So it's a bit separate, but it talks about a lot of the same themes we discuss on this show, but also it's something that I want to treat as its own thing. So this miniseries is called How to Stan, and I'm going to break down all sorts of aspects of fandom culture, what it means to be a fan today, how that's changed over time in terms of how much of our identity is wrapped up in fandom affiliations, when fans go too far, when fans are showing their best selves, all of those extremes, as well as just how do you really view fans and the ethics of fandom culture. There's a lot to get into. It's called How to Stan, and I will be releasing episodes once or twice a week. I'm still figuring out the details because I'm finalizing this show. I'm doing it all on my own like I do this one. So TBD on all of the info, but I will get that out to you ASAP. But just stay tuned for How to Stan, a side series that will cover fandom culture. I've got a bunch of content broken up into several parts for that series. Part 1, I'm going to talk about some marketing strategies, ways that groups have uniquely tried to distinguish themselves with that one really is a lot about K-pop, as well as C-pop and J-pop artists who have very, very unique concepts in terms of members and the graduation systems or similar systems, in terms of actual concepts, props they use during their performances, all of that. And then episode 2, we'll talk about physical spaces. Physical spaces as in like the BTS house in Seoul, for example, and other pop-up exhibits and things like that, and that form of marketing strategy and how successful that's been. So an inside look at that. And then the third episode will be about kawaii culture, as well as just overall the cuteness aesthetic and how animated characters from Hello Kitty to BT21 to everyone else you could think of, Ant-Man, all of those iconic characters, Pensu, of course, we gotta talk about, all of those characters, what is it with them? Why are they so cute? Why do we love them? What is it about them that we love, and that aesthetic, and that part of culture, and how has it spread around the world over time? Part 4, we'll be looking at technology, so how marketing utilizes CGI, holograms, Vocaloids, all of that next level futuristic concepts. Part 5 will cover the history of fandom, so looking into basically where fans started, what fans of past decades and really the past century have been like. What has it been like to be a fandom member back then? How has it changed? The next part will be looking at the Batman fandom specifically. I will share more later about that. The part after that I release will be about fan labor. How has that changed over time? How have the amount of time fans spent serving as translators and unofficial PR people for their favorite artists, how should that be compensated, the debate around that, and how that commitment is compensated, what forms that takes, and the whole debate around that and how that has changed, especially since the internet really became a big part of fandom life daily. And the last part is going to talk about some extreme examples of fandoms that have really taken things too far, but also talk about the more common strains of fandom, I guess you could say, and basically when fandoms get too exclusive, when they promote exclusivity, who is being left out and disregarded in fandoms, and how can we change that? So it'll deal with sociology, the ethical dimensions of fandom, history, pop culture critiques, all the usual subject areas I like to cover on my main show, but How to Stan will also be a separate series, so very excited to start releasing that, so stay tuned. It'll be dropping sooner than you think. So, moving on to today's headlines and news before we get to my other theme for today's show. Recommendations of the week, I have picked 3. So, I recommend you listen to Kane Daniels' new mini album, Magenta. It is his best work yet. I honestly was not thrilled with Cyan. Not that it was bad, it was just okay for me. 5 out of 10. And so Magenta is more like a 7 out of 10. I really like it. And I just think he's really finding his unique lane, and I encourage him to continue following that lane. Also, Rocket Punch's Blue Punch EP I really like. I think The is the best song. It's called The, and I think it's the last song in the EP. It's just there's just something about it that's really catchy. It's just a well-done pop song. I really like what they've got going for them. I also want to see them succeed because they have what I wish more K-pop groups started doing, which is getting rid of assigned roles and just letting every member be whatever they want to be. So, really hoping that catches on with them. Third recommendation, as I've probably already recommended on the show before because I'm really into Ash Island, I've been revisiting Ash Island songs again lately, and my latest favorite is probably Error. It features Loopy. It's great for fans of One, the solo artist One. It's great for fans of Ravi. That's kind of the vein Ash Island is in. Very auto-tune drenched, but in a way that is pleasing to the ear, if that makes sense. There's this specific kind of subgenre of pop, it seems, that's like auto-tune is your instrument, and it's impressive. To me, it's still like another instrument, the way people can change and tweak their voices. It's like an electronic feel, but not in an annoying way. At least that's how I hear those songs, so I guess it's kind of G-Dragon-esque in that way, too. So, anyway, that kind of gives you an idea. It's called Error. I highly recommend that song. Also, I recommend for your main action of the day that I really want you to take is to please check out this new podcast. It's called Nice White Parents. It's really interesting and important, I think, and eye-opening, and I think if you're offended or feel sensitive at just that name of the show or about the description of the show, maybe you need to listen to it the most, and just be open to it. Just listen to it. Don't, yell at the whatever device you use to listen to podcasts. Don't get defensive and digging your heels. Just listen to it and think about it and try to put yourself in other people's shoes and just listen to it. I really just recommend you keep your mind open. Check out that show. It really goes into some of basically, it's a lot of the dynamics that just kind of implicitly lie within our everyday actions that have changed the education system in the USA, really with just all of the ways that implicit racial biases have led to such huge concrete shifts in education, and things didn't have to be that way. The inequalities were exacerbated by those implicit biases, and so it's up to us, especially white people, to really, really, really listen to that kind of content and open ourselves up to criticism so we can learn from it and build a better world, because we just have to. We have to show that Black Lives Matter. So that is my big action of the day for you all. Alright, let's get to your K-pop headlines. So lots of exciting news as of late. BoA is celebrating her 20th anniversary as a performer by having an official Twitter and Instagram account released. Super M has an official TikTok account with their Go 100 challenge they're doing there, and they also are going to perform on Good Morning America August 20th. Blackpink announced that the person they are collaborating with for their August 28th single release is Selena Gomez, which I should have seen coming. I don't know why I was so insistent that it was probably going to be Ariana, but maybe that's on their album too. I mean, TBD. Other exciting news in the world of podcasters. Congrats to Alexa, who has officially permanently joined Jay from Day 6 as a co-host for his podcast called How Did I Get Here? I'm not being paid to promote their show. I just really want to help promote their work as well. Plus, I'd love to have them on the show sometime, so side note, shout out to them. And if they're listening, I'd love to have them here as well, and I'd love to help keep promoting How Did I Get Here because I enjoy that podcast. Irene and Sulgi are going to be able to perform at the Time 100 Talks event, which is really huge. Monsta X recently performed there as well. It is basically this virtual Time Magazine sponsored leadership conference that connects leaders of all over the world, political figures, musicians. Also, then there's routinely a performance in the midst of all of the conferences, and this is an ongoing series, so for them to be part of this global event is really a huge deal, so congrats to them. Big BTS news, they have another online concert on the way. This one, their details are very minimal so far. The news dropped less than 24 hours ago as of recording time, but it looks like it is going to be a show that is online and in person, but in person in a very, very limited capacity, just in South Korea for fans that are distanced, according to the CDC guidelines and whatnot, and of course that condition will be subject to change based on COVID-19, but it sounds like they're going to try to have an in-person show for real, just a very, very scarce, spread out audience. And it will also be simultaneously streamed online for people around the world to watch and tune in. It's going to be October 10th and 11th. It's called the Map of the Soul 1. And so, two things about that. First of all, the fact that it's spelled like O-N and then :E makes me think that it's like a nice little reference to their single On, the fact that they left the On separate from the letter E, so I respect that. Second thing is that I wonder if this was going to be the name of their second leg of the tour. So pre-COVID, I wonder if the plan was to go on the Map of the Soul tour, and then the extra leg they would add to the tour would be the Map of the Soul 1 tour, and then the next album after Map of the Soul 7 maybe is Map of the Soul 1. I'm just thinking, speculating here, but you never know. Maybe that's kind of the plan for the next album title, so don't be surprised if that's what it is. But anyway, just keep in mind that BTS are some of those artists who don't do anything unintentionally, so you can read into every action they do, and there's probably some meaning behind it. So, other exciting concert news, IZ*ONE is going to have a big online concert event that will be September 13th at 5 p.m. Korean time, which is 3 a.m. Chicago time, so again, not an ideal one, but it is what it is. And that one, they say AR technology will be utilized. Not clear how yet. It doesn't sound like it's through Beyond Live or a similar app that we already know about, but maybe it's another new app that they're going to work on. But they're trying to do something with that technology. Other big news, Jay Park and former EXO member Chris Wu, they are both set to produce The Rap of China, it's kind of like Show Me the Money. It's a hip-hop competition show, and they will both be a part of its 4th season, which is very exciting. Also exciting is the A-Nation online concert lineup. So the A-Nation is, long story short, it is a super iconic, the biggest summer music festival Japan has, and the A-Nation Festival, of course, cannot be in person this year, so it will be held online August 29th, and several K-pop acts will be performing: EXO-SC, Red Velvet, Super Junior, and Super M. So SM Entertainment is thriving as always. Other big news, April's Nyan is an ambassador this year for the 2020 International Animation Festival, which is huge. Some less exciting news, Apink's Hayeon has officially revealed through the live chat with fans that she has decided to leave the celebrity soccer team. So we mentioned this story in a previous episode where fans were a little concerned that there would be a lot of flirting and interacting between the male and female soccer teams, and she insisted that wasn't the case. They never even crossed paths, but she didn't want all of that drama and controversy, I guess you could say, affecting the non-celebrity members of the team. She didn't want them to have to worry about that negative press and spotlight. So she decided it would be better to just excuse herself from the team and just play soccer for fun, away from being a part of any official team, which is frankly disappointing, but I guess fans wanted that from her. I think it's a cultural difference really in how, because I just know in the USA if celebrities teamed up for a soccer team, we wouldn't care. If they were flirting with the other team, we might actually encourage it, but I think so that's why it's a little hard for me to understand why this was such a big deal. Is it just a cultural difference? But that is what it is, and so hopefully that decision is not disappointing to her. She didn't sound too genuinely upset, and she reassured fans, don't feel bad for me, I made this decision on my own, don't feel like you caused me to do this. But yeah, it just is what it is. One more piece of disappointing news before we get to a better piece of news. So, Neon Punch, a girl group, has officially disbanded, but a few of the members will be coming back as a new group. I am going to guess it's pronounced Zoom or Shum. It is spelled X-U-M. And they basically, for a while now, it's been rumored that they broke up secretly because we haven't heard from them in quite a while. And they were set to make a comeback in May or June that never really came about, and so people were worried. But it turns out that COVID-19, as well as other issues with this small company, have led to financial woes, and other factors aside from finances have led to this group's disbandment. So A100 Entertainment officially issued a statement confirming the rumors about it just the other day. And so this XUM group is going to debut later this summer. And so fingers crossed that is a success and this company can financially become more financially healthy again. So that is the future of the group. It's kind of a makeover it's undergoing. More exciting news. So the Learn Korean with BTS program that is through Weverse now is going to be in the physical world as well as the virtual now, because as soon as this fall semester, some universities across the globe will be teaching the Learn Korean with BTS curriculum. This is super exciting. It is going to be taught at universities in the USA, Paris, Vietnam, and Egypt. And these textbooks were carefully created with Big Hit Education, this side project of Big Hit Entertainment. Big Hit Education also worked with the Korea Foundation, the Korean Language Contents Institute, and other groups. So really this is a very officially Korea-approved set of materials to learn Korean with BTS. And so I really was kind of thanking my lucky stars that I graduated in May, but if I had known this would be coming to universities, maybe I would have been a bit more regretful about not going back to school right now. But I can still learn Korean with BTS on my own, so there's that. More updates just in the world of stats really quick, and then we'll move on to some other stories. So Jessie's Nunu Nana video has reached 10 million views. Jennie's solo video has reached 8 million likes. EXO's Obsession video has 100 million views. Treasure's The First Step Chapter 1 album has reached 200,000 pre-orders. And Victon's Ha Sun-woon has his first EP out called Fame, which topped the iTunes charts in 11 different countries and has already sold over 30,000 copies. Victon is really having the biggest year. I don't know if they could still be considered rookies because there are quite a few other groups that came after them that might be considered the rookies of the year, so I don't know if they can still even count really as rookies, but if so, they're like the super rookies of the year. They really are taking off fame-wise. So congrats to them, and hopefully more members get to have solo careers as well, seeing the success of this. So, all right, let's talk about quarantine. So in the quarantine segment today, let's talk about what the concert industry has been doing, the latest ways they've been trying to let artists promote their work. So one strategy being used to counter the live stream fatigue, in the sense that the live streams are all blurring together these days and we're tired of them and we need something new and fresh. To counter that, as well as to make live streams feel more special and exclusive and intimate, this new strategy is being utilized called geofencing. And basically what that is putting not physical barriers, but a sense of a barrier, an electrical barrier of sorts, a digital barrier between a select audience and the outside world. Basically closing in digitally a group of audience members so that it's not a live stream accessible to anyone, so that you have to get in a way. So basically this geofencing tactic tends to be about 100 miles of a range. So it prevents fans from watching a concert if they live over 100 miles outside of the designated range. So this is basically where artists are trying to go on tour to different cities, and then when they go to your city, quote unquote go to your city, if you don't live 100 miles around that city, then that you can't go to that specific show. So that's the plan. It's being tested out right now by Michael Brunn. He's trying it out for $5 a ticket, which is super reasonable if you ask me, for this experimental experience. He's only trying it with 3 shows so far: Chicago, Miami, and LA, and it's for that 100-mile range. So we will see how that goes. There are some artists who have tried similar measures but not city-based before. For example, Laura Marling, she tried this where she just separated the shows by country, and so she had separate shows for the USA and the UK. So I'm not sure what the future holds for geofencing. I think more stars will try to utilize it, but I'm not sure I'm a fan of that. Although I also agree with the need to make things more exclusive and interesting now, because I get the live stream fatigue. But at the same time, I just don't know if I don't know how to feel about this, because it's kind of, the exclusivity comes with excitement as well as frustrations and concerns, just in terms of morality of closing off your show to people who live within that area, because people around the world then can't tune in. If this geofencing thing was utilized by K-pop groups, I would never get to see them in an online show. So not sure how to feel about that. I'm going to start, though, however, we have to make do with these online formats, because it's not safe yet to do in-person shows for the most part, unless we go the route of that UK venue, and we already talked a lot about that on the show. But really, in-person concerts are a ways away. So those who are pretending that's not true, pretending there's not a virus, especially in the USA, I've decided to have a show shaming of the week, essentially, on this show. So whenever I find out that another artist is just totally violating health guidelines and acting like there isn't a deadly pandemic in the USA, that in the USA has really failed to control it, frankly, I'm going to call them out. So today's call out of the week is for Smash Mouth. What are they doing? Shrek would not approve. I know Shrek kind of likes the fact that we're in quarantine, because he loves just being left alone in isolation, and his swamp is his alone. He doesn't want people to come. He wants to be like, no, you have to distance yourself. But even Shrek is probably tired of quarantine. So please, Smash Mouth, don't disobey the health guidelines. Yes, I know you have more songs than the one from Shrek, but we're just focusing on that right now, because I have a feeling you don't like that. So I'm very upset about this, because the longer that groups like Smash Mouth decide to ignore the fact there's a pandemic, the longer the fans who are following health guidelines will have to continue to follow them, because the others aren't helping. It's like the people on the group project who end up tanking the project because they weren't doing their share of the work. So please, everyone, do your part to just hold out so we can go back to real concerts someday. So we just have to be patient, and it will pay off. We can't just rush this. All right, shaming over for today. Other exciting news, though, in the world of digital concerts. TikTok continues to be used well for these shows. The Weeknd's TikTok show, the numbers are in for it, and over 2 million viewers tuned in for it. It also raised $350,000 for the Equal Justice Initiative, which just proves the power of virtual fundraising still, and that's a very exciting piece of news. Also, Chance the Rapper is possibly leading the future of advertising. This is labeled as an interactive advertising campaign that will launch in September, where Chance the Rapper will be promoting Bitmoji and Ralph Lauren and his music by basically it's like, because he couldn't like go in person to film an ad, it's kind of like a virtual commercial for Ralph Lauren in Bitmoji form with Chance the Rapper. So it promotes three things at once. It promotes him, it promotes Bitmoji, and it promotes Ralph Lauren. It's viewed as this interactive content, so apparently he's doing sponsored by Ralph Lauren and Bitmoji. He's going to do a sponsored digital concert through some sort of app or online service, so lots coming in the works with that double collab, and I just think that's very smart marketing-wise, and I just would anticipate, not be surprised when we see more artists in the future go that route, because that's the way they'll bring in money these days when they can't go on tour, and also because it's just that interactive technology is really what is technology and fandom culture has really come to, which we'll talk a lot more about in my How to Stand miniseries, but that is kind of the future, I think, of marketing, is that super layered approach that incorporates technology in a new way. Also, speaking of technology being used in new ways, we've talked a lot before about one of my pop queens, Charli XCX, and the latest from her is that her special fan collaborative quarantine album project has its official booklet out. So if you go to Charli XCX's official website, you can order her booklet, which is basically a compilation of fan art as well as her original fan art and lyrics and things like that. All a compilation of the making of her album, How I'm Feeling Now, which is a great pop album, one of the best this year, honestly. And so I would highly recommend checking out that album and that book, because if you buy it, not only do you get to feel like you were a part of a special fan project, that you get a physical manifestation of proving the fan-idol relationship these days, but also the proceeds go to LA Alliance, a homelessness aid organization. So it's a win for everyone. So I would highly recommend ordering your copy today. Lastly, let's talk about the first award show that is set to premiere in this post-COVID starting era. So it's apparently going to be happening very soon. It is a Latin music award show that will feature J Balvin, Pitbull, Karol G, a lot of big names, and they're planning to do an in-person award show again. Doesn't sound like there will be any red carpet or anything. There will be no audience, but it will have, production crew there, up to 50% of its normal amount of crew on set. They'll try to distance themselves as they record. Masks will be required of every singer and crew member. And so they're going to try to make this work in a distant way, in a way where they wear masks. They also plan to make sure that no more than 5% of the venue's capacity is full at any one time, with crew, with singers, etc. And they're also requiring that these performers, during their rehearsals and other reasons why they'd be in the venue at the time, not travel with more than 4 members of an entourage. So they're trying to do this safely and proceed with caution, which I appreciate. Not sure how it's going to go, and I do wish they would find a way to just use an outdoor venue, because it doesn't hurt to do it even more to limit the spread of the virus, which tends to happen when you move outdoors, so I would recommend they do that. But it's better than the Smash Mouth technique of getting through this. So that is your Quarantune's roundup of the day of music and live music in this era. So after the break, we are going to talk about world music, the concept of othering music like K-pop music, and the term world music, where it comes from, its origins, and really why it's so problematic. In my last year of college, I tried to explore different variables in a study regarding K-pop fandom identity, and I was trying to look up and find data to support my questions about if there were links between K-pop fan personality traits and interest in K-pop, or try to just gauge really quantifiably if there are certain things like openness to other cultures and other variables that cause someone to like K-pop or not, be receptive to it in a different way. And so, long story short, I ended up looking at and analyzing GSS data to do that. That's General Social Survey data, which is basically a massive public opinion poll project conducted every year in the USA. So I specifically wanted to look at correlations for USA fans between a bunch of different variables. The one that I'm going to talk about, though, for this example is tolerance towards other cultures. And so I tried to look at see if there was a correlation between how much time people in the USA spend listening to K-pop music and the amount of time that they, or the amount of tolerance they seem to show, if not full acceptance and appreciation for other cultures outside of the USA's culture. So how much of their cultural consumption is international, really, and if that, if there's some sort of bigotry that causes some people maybe subconsciously to reject K-pop. And so what I did, long story short, is I tried to use the SPSS program to basically crunch the numbers. It's basically like the high-tech version of Excel, or the more complex version of Excel, I guess you could say. But anyway, so when was trying to compute the variables and find a correlation, what I discovered was that it was really hard to find, not because there was no correlation to find and I was looking at nothing and trying to make something of nothing, but because the variables were not specific at all. So I was looking at the GSS, I was looking at the data set, and I could not find a question on the survey about K-pop or about specifically Korean culture. But the problem wasn't even that as much as I couldn't even find a question on the survey about Asian music or Asian culture. The most specific I could possibly get was world music. It was all lobbed into the category of world music, so the closest I could get to my research question, I had to totally modify my project and get to a different question that I could more accurately answer, because the most specific question I could try to answer was if listening to world music makes people less bigoted, is basically what I was getting at. That was it on the General Social Survey, and then I tried to look at past years as opposed to just 2019 when I was doing this. So just all the past years of the GSS, just trying to find a more specific question, and it does not exist. So the most specific the GSS has ever gotten at deciding and really looking at public opinion and tolerance towards other cultures is, well, do they listen to world music or, consume cultures from around the world? So the most specific, there were other questions about, consuming other cultures, but really the only one that focused on music is world music. So the issue with that is a lot to unpack. So let's just back up and talk about where this term even came from. So the term world music was basically used as a marketing tactic. And it was basically in this London pub in 1987. This group of presumably white DJs basically decided that they wanted to find new ways to market music. And they realized basically that instead of trying to just work their way up through the ranks or just, find ways to market by, just giving it time and patience and trying to work with the system, even though it was hard to get their name out there and stand out, just try their best with the existing system. They just decided to go their own route entirely and make their own system. They basically paved their own shortcut to marketing success by adding a whole new category of music. So instead of trying to compete with, other people promoting rap music or other people promoting pop music, for example, they just decided we're going to make our own category so that there will be no competition to promote it. So they created world music essentially as a marketing gimmick based on, what kind of perceived foreign influences affected the sound of the music. They would throw that maybe into the world music category. So this group of DJs basically pitched this idea to a group of independent music labels, and these 11 labels all pitched in and basically crowdfunded this idea, so they were able to market, thanks to the help of these labels, this whole new genre of music. And they were paid by these 11 labels what they considered a sweet amount. the actual technical amount they were paid, there's some scrutiny over and questions about, but really, they basically just describe it as a sweet deal for the time. And then, so basically, the 1980s was when basically they started using this term widely as a way of saying, the late 1980s, they basically used this as a way of saying any non-English music would get into that category. So instead of just focusing on, let's try to find a way to create this foreign market, for lack of a better term, they just decided everything without English words in it would go into their world music category starting in the late 1980s. And they viewed it as kind of a good, refreshing change in a way. They were trying to find a way to, basically, you could sum up the music marketing wars of the 1980s by you could basically sum it all up by looking at the techno scene and looking at how basically the debate was all about how much should this be count as real and authentic music if you're using synthesizers and other popular in the 80s technology. If does the electronic space count as real music as opposed to the instruments that are considered like raw instruments. And so there was this battle raging about how to even define like real music versus what they viewed as just too manufactured. And so that debate really came to an ugly head in the 80s. And so that also kind of factored in here where they thought, well, we're not doing anything wrong. It's not like we're those electronic people, We're still promoting authentic music just in its own category. So there's a lot more to unpack there. But that's kind of the gist of the music scene, just so you could get the picture that there were a lot of marketing feuds in the music world in the 80s and among listeners as well, And then world music really tried to stand out even more from the so-called not real music categories because it became an official Billboard chart category in 1990. And so it was then added to the Grammys as a category in 1991. Although it's important to keep in mind throughout this whole thing that this was promoted by a bunch of white people. So the white guys that worked on this marketing gimmick also ended up benefiting most because actually, historically, the world music category Grammys have shown the most gains for German artists, French artists, and Irish artists. So it wasn't exactly a super diverse looking amount of winners coming out of that category. And so the term has been used more recently too, and that is why it remains an issue, and that's why I couldn't find more precise research terms to use just this past year in 2019. And so there are a lot of layers to this. And I think it's kind of summed up best by this op-ed that the frontman of the Talking Heads, David Byrne, wrote. He wrote it in 1999, and in this op-ed called I Hate World Music, he said, quote, "It's a none too subtle way of reasserting the hegemony of Western pop culture. It ghettoizes most of the world's music. A bold and audacious move, white man." So basically sarcastically saying that part. So there are some issues kind of with the language he uses there, but all to say that his point was that it's a way to shoehorn, to box out, to pigeonhole all non-Western music. And it basically, the problem with this term, it might just sound like a silly semantics debate to be having, but it really does have concrete consequences, and words matter here, because if you put so many diverse, nuanced cultures and musical lanes into this one category that are non-Western, it basically contributes to that view, like he said, of this hegemony of other cultures. Like they're all viewed as this one thing, and it just contributes to this minimizing of and reduces the amount of time spent appreciating all of the individual works of non-Western artists over time. So it's had quite a lasting impact because it's been this separate category. And aside from just othering the groups and kind of keeping them to the side in a way that could dismiss them easily, it's also been harmful because it basically leaves them wondering if they fit in the mainstream categories in a way, where they feel like these artists, they all automatically are going in the world music category. And then when that happens, does that imply that they don't belong in the pop category or the rap category? It's basically all, it sounds like there's no way for them to be considered mainstream because they're always put into that side category that was created to, in a way, created to other them. Whether the intentions were good or not, it did other them. And so that consequence has to be really looked at. I don't care as much about the intent of these guys as the impact. And the intent was also kind of ethically questionable, given it was all about marketing and money from the beginning. But anyway, so the impact here is really important to pay attention to. And there's a piece written by Douglas McGray that I find very interesting and we'll talk about in my How to Stand mini-series more, but it is called Japan's Gross National Cool. And it really, I think, ties together a lot of my main arguments here about the problem with the term world music. So Douglas McGray said, quote, "Critics often reduce the globalization of culture to either the McDonald's phenomenon or the world music phenomenon. For the McDonald's camp, globalization is the process of large American multinationals overwhelming foreign markets and getting local consumers addicted to special sauce. In this case, culture flows from American power, and American supply creates demand. For the world music camp, globalization means the fresh marginal culture reaches consumers in the United States through increased contact with the rest of the world. Here, too, culture flows from American power, with demand from rich Americans expanding distribution for Latin pop or Irish folk songs. But Japanese culture has transcended U.S. demand or approval. At the same time, Japan has made deep inroads into American culture, usually written off by the rest of the world as aggravatingly insular." So, there is a lot there, but he makes a few main points I want to zero in on. One being that this concept of the globalization of culture these days, it is important when we do that to see where the power starts. And so that's what he's getting at, is that who is controlling the supply and demand, who is the upper hand regarding this marketing. As we have this increasingly globalized economy, we need to look at who has the most power in that economy. And so this term, this McDonaldization or the McDonald'sing of whatever, is used to kind of describe how, American companies like to try to really be the puppeteers that direct these other countries and direct and redirect where their cultures are. And as I said many times before in this show, whether you like it or not, it's just a fact that an artist is considered to have made it and been successful in the world if they make it in the USA. And if they don't, they're not considered really to have achieved global success. And so that precedence given to the American market, that extra level of prestige associated with the American market, has this lasting impact on other cultures because then indirectly they seem less than or less important just in terms of status. And so that is something he wants people to keep in mind. He also wants to keep in mind really not just where the power flows, but basically keeping in mind that narrative about where the power flows is sometimes skewed. So as much as I just said the USA is, I know I'm contradicting myself a little bit here because this is a very nuanced issue, but basically what he's saying is that as much as it's true that there are places like the USA that really seem to act quite dominant in terms of power dynamics of the economy, there are also parts of that are too stressed as a key part of the narrative when that's not actually the case. So sometimes other countries get credit for things they didn't really do, is what I'm trying to say. And so that's really what it boils down to, is that we just need to remember the roots of different cultures and where they came from, because we assume after a long period of time, oh, that's been with us forever, it's probably just something we came up with here, when actually a lot of our culture comes from other countries and vice versa. So it's just important to remember the cultural flow is constant and it's layered, and we shouldn't have such possessiveness around certain aspects of culture and feel like we own the parts that we don't. Basically what I'm trying to say is this piece basically defends Japan specifically in stressing the importance of not devaluing how much we need to appreciate what other countries have done for our own culture, and how much we've influenced each other's cultures, and therefore should respect each other's cultures. And I mean, think about all that we would have. The best way to think about the impact of other cultures is think about what we'd be like if we didn't have them. So let's think about Japan. Think about if the USA never had PlayStation, never had Nintendo, or Pokemon, or Tamagotchi toys, or concepts like The Matrix that came out of Japan, anime, Miku, Hello Kitty, and other kawaii culture, fashion trends. Tokyo is really considered a fashion capital of the world. I don't think people remember that enough. They remember New York Fashion Week and London Fashion Week, but, Tokyo Fashion Week is big. Fashion, food, clothing, I said fashion, food, video games. Imagine if we didn't have any of that. And then think about Korea, if we didn't have Korean films or K-dramas or K-pop or K-beauty, food trends, clothing trends from Korea, that's huge. And then, so it's just important to keep that in mind. And the reason why I separate those answers is to keep in mind that what world music does is categories like world music or world fashion or things like that would basically say, picture if we didn't have all of this stuff. So let me put it a different way. Let's say that I'm giving a lecture about the influence of different cultures on each other, and I'm told I have 2 minutes to describe the impact. I could spend that 2 minutes talking. I could spend 1 minute of those two talking about, for example, Japan's impact on our culture, and 1 minute talking about Korea's impact. But if I'm told to just use the term world music, I'm grouping in hundreds of different cultures into a 2-minute speech. Of course, that strips all of those cultures of nuance and their unique traits and all the ways that they uniquely want to be identified. Of course, that gets rid of all of the important things that make them unique. Of course, that waters down what they're all about. And so, as much as that's not really a great example because, of course, 2 minutes is ridiculous to do that, but what I'm saying is that we need to give ourselves the time to appreciate cultures individually because they all add up to this great whole, but they're also important to recognize in their parts and not just the sum of those parts. So, we're going to talk about that piece, Japan's Gross National Cool, a lot more on the How to Stand miniseries, but I want to introduce you to that by adding in my thoughts about world music and where it came from. And it's just important to keep in mind that there is just so much there when they say terms like world music. And so it's important to keep in mind and take time to acknowledge all of the subcategories you could theoretically put under world music, and then that should really show you how it's a term we should frankly just do away with, and then just mainstream it in a way that it'll never be considered mainstream if it's always thrown into a world music category. And so if you want to really help other cultures not feel so othered and want to be able to take time to appreciate them, of course that has to do with, a lot of implicit bias training and whatnot and unlearning of different concepts, but it also requires providing main outlets for them to be more normalized in one another's countries. So just something to keep in mind. Lots there to keep in mind, so I will leave you with that for the day. So pretty soon you will get to see, if not today, it will be this weekend, at least one new episode of How to Stand, and then regularly, probably weekly after that, maybe twice a week. Again, I'm still working out the details based on other stuff, because in addition to How to Stand, I have other mini-series / mini projects / other episodes and interviews in the works, lots going for the show, so the schedule is still subject to change a lot, but just stay tuned, a lot of content is on the way. So I hope this was an interesting episode of the show today, and stay tuned because at least one episode of How to Stand will be next, and then a lot more that I'm excited to share. So continue to spread the word about the show, please. I really appreciate it, and all the streaming really helps me out with just spreading the word and, making it as an aspiring podcaster. So thank you all for listening and for your support, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you.